Do you struggle turning your horse? Do you feel like you pull and he just doesn't go where you want? Do you feel like you're unstable when you try to turn him? Well, here's a quick tip to help you make those turns much more pleasant and enjoyable for both of you. So many riders are taught to pull on the rein and take their arm away from their body, but this makes you so insecure, and it also isn't so effective. So, when you're trying to turn, it's really important to understand your anatomy and how that works in terms of turning. So let's take a look at the anatomy that we're dealing with when it comes to turning your horse. We've got your arm, and your arm has the humerus or the upper arm bone. It has a ball and socket joint, but that's not a very stable joint. In fact, the ball and socket joint in your shoulder is quite weak. It's just a little shallow cup, and you've got this ball, and that's because we have incredible movement in our arm. We can do what's called brachiation, which is take our arm over our head, out to the side, all kinds of things. So when it comes to understanding your shoulder, you have to realize that the shoulder joint isn't a very stable or secure joint. So again, if we look at this, we have this little tiny cup and this ball. They usually refer to it as a scoop of ice cream. And then, of course, we've got the humerus, which is the long bone or upper arm bone, of course. And then when we get down here, we have the elbow joint, and the elbow joint is comprised of two bones meeting the humerus, the radius and ulna. And that allows us to be able to rotate our hand, either downward, palm down, or upward, palm up. So this is very important when we're thinking about riding because it has an effect on the way the whole system works. Now, if you notice in this picture, this arm is really far away from the body, which means that all of the work is going to have to be done right here at the top, right at the shoulder. So if you have any kind of shoulder problems, say you've damaged your rotator cuff or broken your collarbone, you're asking that part of your anatomy to do an awful lot of work that, there's an easier way to do it. So we're going to look at the next part of your anatomy. We're going to look at the shoulder from behind. So here is your shoulder from behind. Here's your shoulder blade. Okay, and again, that little shallow cup with that ball and socket joint. And then we have our elbow down here. And you can see that when we use our arm away from our body, this becomes a really long lever. Now, if you're wondering about levers, it's really simple. It's what you do when you muck stalls. You use a long lever, the length of the handle of your manure fork, and you have the load at one end. And because of the long handle, you can easily lift the load. That works great for mucking stalls, but when it comes to riding horses, it means that our arm has become a long lever and it's not very strong. It just takes a little tiny bit at the end to make a big difference up at the top. Okay, and just so that you can see what the shoulder joint looks like, you can see this little tiny cup and this really big ball. So that's not very stable at all. It doesn't take much to put stress and strain on that. And that's the last thing we want to do because there's a simpler way. So that just gives you an idea of the anatomy, that when you're asking to turn and you take your arm away from your body, you're putting all the work up into your shoulder, which means that you have to struggle really hard. And when you do that, you have to tighten and then try to use your arm, but you made a long lever. And there's a much simpler way. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so if we scroll up here, here's just an example of many riders and what they do. They rotate the shoulder forward, the elbow comes away, and then they're trying to do everything from their hand. And of course, just like we've described, they've made this leverage out here that's not to their advantage. Okay, and then some riders take it even further and they dip their shoulders and the elbow is going away from their body and now their hand is going away from their body. So this is putting a lot of strain on your shoulder, but notice more importantly that the side of the rib cage is collapsed and the weight has dropped. And so now, this is getting confusing to our horse because we're saying turn, but we've collapsed, we've thrown the weight over, we're knocking the horse off balance, and then we wonder why he won't turn. So let's look at the solution. And if we just scroll up, here's the simple solution. Keep your elbow by your side. And that way you're connecting your elbow to your pelvis and you've just eliminated this whole lever arm. In other words, when you keep the upper arm by your side, your elbow is so close to your pelvis, which is close to your hip, that you're much stronger and it takes a lot less to just indicate. Also notice here that the hand is turned upward a little bit. So now we're giving a clear indication. You can see that the hand is turned upward. We're giving a clear indication to our horse that we want that turn, and then our seat stays level, our hips are great, our thighs are in great, our weight's over our seat, and we stay balanced and in the middle. And that's really what the horse is looking for, that we stay in the middle and don't knock him off balance, and yet indicate that we want to turn. So if you're struggling with circles and turns, just make sure to keep your elbow by your side, do a slight turning of the key with your hand, and always remember to enjoy the ride.